Recording in progress.
I hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, December 5th, 2022. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Strawn?
Here.
Councilmember Groff?
Here.
Councilmember Etten?
Present.
Councilmember Wilmes?
Present.
Mayor Rowe?
Here. And with us at the dais, we have our City Attorney, Mark Hagen, who's on my right at the left end of the dais, and City Manager Pat Trudgeon on my left at the right end of the dais, just to keep it all confusing. And we have a number of staff, department heads, and other guests who will be participating in the meeting as items come up on the agenda. I do want to remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to be sure to silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. Do we have any participants remotely online this evening?
Don't believe any signed up, and we do not.
Do not, okay. Otherwise, we would have had special instructions for those folks too. Given that they aren't, we'll move right on then. Then the next item on our agenda would be to stand, if you're able, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made from a staff perspective this evening?
There's not, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Are there any changes that council members would like to be made to the agenda or items to be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? No? All right. We'll double check with folks in the audience who might be here for an item in section 10 of our agenda, what's known as the consent agenda. Those items are listed on the second page of the agenda, items A through F. Normally, those items are taken up as a single motion with limited opportunity for input or discussion because they're rather ministerial in nature. But in case somebody is here for one of those items, we always do want to check at the start of the meeting because if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment on one of those items, we can pull it off from the end of the meeting, take it up earlier so that we can get to your comment or question. Is there anyone here for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda known as the consent agenda? All right, doesn't appear to be the case. That being the case, then, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Wilmes, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda this evening. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to items of either city, of interest to people in the city or related to city business, but don't happen to be on tonight's agenda. We will provide an opportunity for public comment on agenda items as they come up, but we do want to provide also at the start of each meeting an opportunity for members of the public to speak, as I said, on an item either related to city business, not on tonight's agenda, or an item of interest to people in the city. Just real quickly, the parameters for public comment are generally a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We ask that you begin your comments with your name and street or address and for the record, and then also address comments or questions to the council. If there are questions or if action needs to be taken, we'll determine at the end of the comments the best path forward. And with that, we'll open it up for anyone who wishes to speak in public comment this evening. And as you're getting situated, I did forget to mention that you don't have to do anything related to the microphones. They'll automatically adjust to your sound level and make sure everybody can hear you.
Good evening. Is this mask a problem?
I think that'll be all right.
Good, okay. My name is Sherry Sanders. I'm on South McCarran's Boulevard, and to my right is Ron Peterson of Shareview.
We were kind of co-founders of the Rice Street Gardens, which are in Maplewood, right across the street from Roseville. There are about 20% of the gardeners. There are about over 50 families which garden from Roseville. So, I mean, it's somewhat relevant to what you guys do.
You want to sign us in, please?
Oh, sure.
I wanted to give a really super brief history of Rice Street Gardens. Back in 2014, I worked with the Community Development Group department here, and we were looking for space in Roseville to have a community garden. And I met someone who found a place for us in Maplewood, and I introduced her to Roseville. And In 2015, we began working with 3 cities, Maplewood and Roseville and St. Paul, to help create Rice Street Gardens. And the very first thing I want to say now is thank you. Thank you to Roseville, the city of Roseville, for their long-term commitment. We have received generous amounts from the Public Works Department of compost, and that is the lifeblood in a garden. And so I wanted to say that Rice Street Gardens has enabled 260 mostly immigrant families to garden on a site near Rice and Roselawn since 2016. We wish to acknowledge the City of Roseville's help and encouragement at its beginnings, along with the way the truckloads of compost and other types of support that you have given. Rice Street Gardens is an important community resource, not only providing food and exercise to all the gardeners, but helping many immigrant families graciously adjust to life in America. So, you might ask, what's new? The entire site, all 13 acres, is owned by the St. Paul Regional Water Services. And they have allowed us to use their acreage free for the community garden. And they had planned to, when they bought the property, they planned to use the land for expansion one day, but they've changed their minds and now they're going to sell the whole site. And that's where our capital campaign comes in. We're working with several interested parties, such as Habitat for Humanity, the City of Maplewood, the Rice-Larpenteur Alliance, and others, and to have some chat with these organizations to ensure that the smaller garden in the future that we're hoping to have will get some funding. So we need approximately $1.3 million, and we have already been pledged $300,000. And we're going to be starting at the beginning of the year with campaigns to help raise that funding. And how you could help us, though, is to publicize our campaign if you can, and to let others know who might want to support our effort. And to learn more, you can contact us at ricestreetgardens@gmail.com. Did you have anything else?
Well, I thought of things as you were talking, but I've forgotten now. But yeah, if you could help out in any way by suggesting people who might have money or might be supportive, that would be great. You know, and we're probably going to do a campaign that lasts all of next year. So starting at the beginning of the year, and we'll sort of audacious to go ahead and do this, try to raise that much money. But I think it's probably something that we can pull off. So.
All right.
Thank you.
And if folks are interested in donating, they can also contact ricestreetgardens@gmail.com as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get all the information.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Best of
Very
luck on the
welcome.
campaign.
Thank you.
You want to introduce the other speakers?
Sure. These are gardeners at the Rice Street Gardens. This is Helen Yu, and this is Constance Gruen, and they just want to share something real quick.
Great. Welcome.
I'll say first, my name is Helen Yu. I'm an immigrant from Taiwan, and I live in Roseville for 50 years. And after I retired, I live alone. I almost feel like I live in a bubble. But by joining, have the community garden that give me a chance to see people's faces and make friends, it's very, very helpful for my mental health, I suppose, for everybody's mental health. I enjoy gardening. It's not only a chance to learn and enjoy the nature. Being out in the garden, I feel just alive, see people. And being an immigrant, I feel like from discover of this garden, and I apply, and I got assigned a lot, and I got to work in the garden and see people. I really feel the being American is being inclusive and equality, and I feel like we are all in one group, nice people. That's it.
Thank you. We're all in the garden together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Constance Gruen. I live about a block away, 2680 Oxford, in those older condominiums. I came immediately to City Hall to sign up for a garden plot when I heard it was open, 2016, I think, in your community garden. All the plots were, well, there were a few plots left. They were all in the shade. But I wanted to grow tomatoes. And they said, oh, but there's this Ron Peterson, you could write to him right away. So I wrote to him immediately and got my application in, so I was one of the early people at Rice Street Gardens. The gardens are my happy place for nurturing the plants more than figuring out what to do with food. But I often have found that I spend more time talking than I take care of the plants. It's been a great garden because there are people from all the continents, and I have friends now from Africa, Taiwan, Nepal, Bhutan, Cameroon, Nigeria. I mean, and I could call them friends. Sierra Leone, Japan. So about only about, 25% of the gardeners speak English as a first language. I didn't know anything about, well, I knew a little about the people from Myanmar coming as refugees. I didn't know anything about the Bhutanese, Nepali Bhutanese. So I've learned a lot. I've made a lifelong friend already who is Nepali Bhutanese. And I've learned that I can apply my theoretical belief that we all do better when we all do better to really help protect this garden for the nutrition, for the lifelong habits, for the psychology, for the family wellness of a community that actually isn't mine. Because when they do better, I really do better. And it's also fun. So I'm helping to work on all this fundraising, and I also really do want to thank you for truckloads of compost. You would not believe what a gift it is. 4 dump truck loads every Friday in the spring. 4 dump truck loads is a lot. And you know, if you don't get there early, it's almost all gone by Saturday morning, early in the season. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during public comment at this time?
Hi, this isn't about the gardens, but she is a gardener by chance. But this is Esther Brown, and she has something important to say.
Hello, everybody. First of all, it is I'm extremely honored to be here tonight, and then so please bear with me and be patient because of my language. I have a broken language, so because English is not my first language, and then so originally I'm from Bhutan. I'm here in the United States. I've been living for 13 years, and then so I have heavily involved in an organization called BCOM, Bhutanese Community Organization. So I have been serving my community in wider sense, like I do so many ways. I'm connected to the community and I serve, and then so. But today I really want to bring to your attention the problem around the housing that my community has been facing, and then so especially around the language barrier people. And then so first and foremost thing I would like to address is there is an apartment, and in Roseville there are lots of apartments, especially apartment around me, around where my community lives, and they are having lots of issues, including like rent, including maintenance, and also the roaches and rodents. And so that right now the people have been living, and I went and talked to the landlord why they are having continuous problem of these rodent and mice. They try to control it, but they are not able to control all, all the way. And it's because people has to live with that mice poop, and then it's a mice stinking inside. We don't know where mice is dead. We have to dig into, we have to work. And I feel like I need to leave my job and stay home full time taking care of the mice and roaches. And that's impossible. I have a bill to pay. And not only me, including me, there are other people who've been facing, especially I have a little language, and I can communicate with the landlord. But there are people who have a language barrier. They are kind of intimidated to talk to them. They have a fear of losing if they go and talk and show more problem about the housing, because they have no option. They have no choice because they have a low income. They are stuck there. And then so if they go and talk to them, and then they are afraid of pushback by the landlord. And other thing is, other problem is communication gap or communication challenges between the landlord and the tenants. And then so when the tenant has certain problem in the apartment, and then they go and talk, they turn their deaf ear to the especially people who has language barrier. And the people who have language, I have studied this very well. People who have a little language, they can just respond right away. But the people who have a language barrier, I see something there. And then so I have spoken in many times advocating for the tenant, and then they responded. And sometimes I also faced like a kind of pushback and tough conversation with why you are not communicating with the tenants, because they have no language. We are the organization. You can reach out to us to solve the problem. They say, we don't care. I need the money. And this kinds of tough conversation I had with the people. And also, the building is very old, and then like when we like even take shower or something, that sink and then even the bathtub get clogged so fast, and it's like like they come and they fix it, and then in a week it get clogged. And then it's not because the kids put the toy in something in the drainage. It's just because every strings of a hair builds up over time, and then it get clogged, and then we get stuck. And they say like they don't come right away, and then so and they keep raising the rent, but they are not fast enough. I understand the problem they have about the maintenance. Sometimes they have a limited maintenance, but also that people have to live not taking shower for weeks. And so these are the problem we have been facing, and the people getting intimidated to talk to the landlord, and that is because they push back, they talk bad, they yell at the the tenant, because I have literally heard them, and I have sat down and talked with them. This is not the way of communication. So it's communication definitely, and I would like to request the city of Roseville to
Intervene.
to come and intervene this. So let there be, the equity in around this, the issues and the challenges that we face. And I definitely look forward that you would come and intervene about this.
All right, thank you for being here this evening and that important information. I definitely want to make sure that our folks that are in charge of enforcing our rental licenses and codes are making note of this, and maybe we can make some connections there. Certainly our fire chief is just in the sort of the middle row on the end there, and his department is largely responsible for that, so that would be an opportunity to make a connection there, and then we can do some follow-up. And I know I have personally, and I think other council members have heard from residents there about issues, and we've been passing those along. And so clearly there are some things we need to continue to work on, and we hope we don't get to the point that we got to a few years ago where we had to revoke the license as sort of the drastic step to get the measures done. But certainly I don't think anyone on this council is shy about doing it again if we need to do it. But let's hope that we don't have to get to that point and we can do all the effort. And I think maybe we need to even think creatively about how to deal with some of the communication issues as well.
Thank you for listening to me.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing the message. It's
And I
very
just
important.
wanted to add something. This was no small feat for her. She's in fear of losing her housing by saying this.
Yeah.
And so are other people.
Well, and I think that's one important thing, is that by dealing with the city rather than directly with the landlord, that disconnection happens, and so that should help protect people. But certainly, regardless of that, I would say, and I'm not an expert on this, but under law about tenants and rights and things like that, that's not acceptable to lose your housing for those types of reasons anyway. But we'd be happy to sort of be in the middle and help isolate some of that if we can.
Thank
Thank
you.
So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Esther, write your name right there.
All right. Is there anyone else here for public comment this evening? All right. With that, then, we will move on with our agenda, and we've got a couple of recognitions this evening. And so I'm going to join Mr. Trudgeon down at the table, and I guess Councilmember Wilmus, too.
Hold on, bunny ears.
We get to relax.
So we're here to recognize Bob Wilmus's service to the city council. You notice that they do this at the beginning of the meeting, so I still have to be nice to Mr. Wilmus, not at the end of the meeting when he's leaving. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there's going to be a seat up, I think, in a couple of years.
No,
Matt, right?
no, don't need that. But in all seriousness, I do want to thank Bob for his service. Bob first joined the city council actually in 2008 when he was appointed to fill the vacancy after the death of Tom Q. I have been with the city since 2007, so I've been with Bob really since the beginning he was here. And he was involved in the Park and Rec Commission. I think I first met him probably December, serving on a comp plan committee when we were doing the comp plan. So known Bob for quite a while, really enjoyed working with him. He has community service first and really what's best for the community. He is never shy to let you know what his opinion is or what he feels about that. And he knows how to find me, so we've had a lot of conversations over the years. But I do appreciate the straight talk on it, and kind of where he's coming from is really actually helpful for the whole dialogue and solutions. He is very astute around land use planning issues, as well as fiscal matters, so certainly appreciate that. And certainly been a huge supporter of the parks and really helped lead amongst many other people the park improvements that happened a few years ago, a decade ago now, I guess. But so we want to thank you for all that service. So on behalf of staff, I want to thank you for your service and your support of staff, as well as you making sure that we're accurate and correct and on time. So we appreciate all that service. Do have two things to give you. First of all is a rose. This is something that we give to departing employees and people that made a commitment. So thank you very much for that. And we have a little package in there.
Okay.
Also, I'll take that so we don't break that.
Take it back right away, that's good.
Also, we have a picture of you on your first council. I think that's you, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
look familiar.
Is that the same suit?
No, it's not. It's not.
So this is in 2008.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, this young guy, I'm not sure who he is, yeah. Yeah, it looks different. So we also have on a USB stick all the other photos. We hope, I think we're missing
thank
one
you.
still. We'll try to track it down so you can take those.
Okay.
But like I said, I do appreciate your work and service, and we'll miss you. Your legacy will continue here. You certainly set some good things in place, and you'll continue to make an impact. So
Well, very
thank you
much appreciate that, Pat. Thank you. Thank you.
And you're not done.
Oh,
So Pat and I decided we couldn't, we had to divide up the responsibilities since there was so much we wanted to say. I did just want to first note that this gavel that I used to gavel in the meeting this evening and will use to close us down at the end of the meeting was actually in the Wilmus family and was used by Matt Wilmus, your great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, I think with Rose Township.
Yes.
In his responsibilities there. You also had a relative, Ed Wilmus?
Ed Wilmus, my
Who was on
grandfather.
the council.
Yes.
Or the village trustees at the time, back in the 50s, I guess it was. One of the first council members or trustees in Roseville, as they were known at that time. And so it's a privilege to use this. And the trivia is that this was also used to gavel in your first meeting,
Yes.
serving on the council. And sort of this brings everything full circle. And so far, I haven't broken it yet, so I hope to keep that intact. And I can echo what Pat said about Bob's expertise in land use and real estate and that side of things. He's also obviously had a very close focus on finance as well as the parks. And, we can name names of things that Councilmember Wilmus has been a big part of, which is certainly the Park Improvement Program, the $19 million in bond funding for all of our parks, the 6 park buildings at that time, and all the improvements to fields and playgrounds and everything that was done. That was a significant upgrade. Another thing that Bob was very much responsible for was making sure that going forward from the renewal program, we continued to make sure park funding and especially park facility funding was adequate and was kept in mind as we were budgeting and planning going forward. So that's been a big emphasis, and I'm glad to have been a small part of that and gotten dragged along by you through the process and certainly learned a lot. Just some of the stats for Bob. You end up with about 12.7 years on the council. given your appointment for a few months in 2008 before getting elected in your own right in 2010. The number one council member is Tom Curley, who I don't know anyone's going to beat his record of 23 years on the council. You're only halfway there, and you've given up. The number two guy is some guy named Roe. Number three is Dean Mashka, who served a long time, 15 years on the council, and so you're actually seventh behind those folks. You're one of four council members who served non-consecutively for those who are really interested in statistics. And it was interesting to note, because we're thinking about the 75th anniversary of the city of Roseville next year. Actually, the city was incorporated in 1948, and by my elementary school math, that 75 years next year. And there's actually been 75 people who have served as a city council member in the city in that time. So it's kind of a coincidence there. The interesting number was 300 years of service between all of those council members, and so Bob's 12.7 is a pretty big chunk of that. So it's, just in terms of the statistics, you've got a record of accomplishment. I think in terms of all that you've done relative to, as we said, the parks and all the other things with the city and your great knowledge, that's a tremendous contribution that's going to last for many years past your service, and I think we'll all be continuing to try to live up to your the standard that you've kind of set for us all. So we'll try to do that, and we may have to give you a call every once in a while about a real estate issue or two. But that being said, it's also been a pleasure personally to serve with you. And I think, get to know you and hopefully consider you a friend, and likewise. And hopefully that will continue after service on the council. We might not have as much to talk about after that, but we'll try to find something. And with that, I want to also give you this certificate, which is in recognition of your service on the council. It's not as beautiful as the rose, but it is suitable for hanging on the wall. And so thank you very much, and congratulations for all your service to the city.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now you get to rebut all the things we've said.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and certainly this evening, a lot of focus on me, things like that, but it really is not about me or what the individual does. This really is a collaborative effort. Without an excellent staff, without excellent colleagues here, we don't accomplish anything for the community. When I first looked to get involved, it really was that kind of focus on parks and things like that, and seeing some of our growing up in Roseville and knowing what our facilities were like when I was younger, and then kind of moving back to Roseville as we were raising a family. My kids were quite young when we moved back to Roseville. Danny actually was born here in Roseville. The girls were born at her home in Blaine. And knowing some of that history and background of what we had and kind of the focus, got involved on the Parks Commission and great groups of people there, and just seeing the number of people that were involved and committed to Roseville made a lot of these decisions, frankly, easier. And the collaborative effort that went into those is really what it's all about. And so certainly very much appreciate the acknowledgement. Certainly could not do this without family, and so that's an important consideration there. So thank you all too.
Yeah, give the rose to your wife.
Yeah, let that break.
And as Councilmember Wilmus is coming back to his seat, if there's anything else any other council members wanted to add, feel free to chime in. This is an opportunity to do that. We tried to cover it as well as we could, though, so hopefully we did it justice. All right, with that, before moving to the second item under recognitions and donations under sort of a point of personal privilege, I do want to also note that this is the last meeting this evening, for the time being perhaps, of our city attorney, Mark Goggin. Mark's firm has been representing the city as our civil attorney and our prosecuting attorney for many years, probably countless years, and as far as it goes back to the previous iterations of the firm. But certainly Mark has been here for a significant amount, I think almost all of my tenure on the council, which is like 16 years, so at least a good chunk of that. And so I think it's important to note his service to the city and to the council, and his participation in all of our decision-making through the years. Wise counsel, keeping us on the right track. I think he's been very responsive both during meetings as well as outside of meetings to all of us on the council, as well as certainly our staff. And so we definitely want to thank him personally for that service and for that contribution, and to say that, we're making a change in terms of the business and the contracts associated with it. The change is only as long as one contract, and you never know what happens in the next go-around. So that being said, we will continue to be using EBBQ for our prosecution services, and I know Mark is a big part of that as well. So thank you again for being our attorney for all this time. And I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say as well, but we've got this opportunity. You certainly can take it.
No, just it's been a pleasure. Been an honor and a pleasure. And Roseville, I know, is a very, very impressively run city, both from a staff perspective and its elected officials. And so it's been a real honor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Right, next on our agenda this evening, under recognitions and donations, is a proclamation related to Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month. And as with most proclamations, the plan here is I'll read it, and then a motion to approve it would be in order. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas human trafficking is a nationwide public health and civil rights crisis, its victims and survivors are everywhere, with Roseville being no exception. Whereas human trafficking includes both labor and sex trafficking with both international and domestic victims, and whereas anyone can become a victim of trafficking, while women and girls are the primary victims or well known, victims and survivors come from every background, race, gender, sexual orientation, and economic status. Traffickers target individuals who, for any reason, are vulnerable. And whereas young people are particularly vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation but face many barriers in reporting what has happened to them, Minnesota's safe harbor law recognizes that any youth under the age of 18 who comes forward will no longer face criminal prosecution and will instead receive comprehensive and trauma-informed services. Safe harbor also seeks to provide communities across Minnesota with the knowledge, skills, and resources to effectively identify and work with sexually exploited and at-risk youth. And whereas all communities must seek to prevent human trafficking before it can occur by promoting safe, healthy, and supportive environments, and whereas the city of Roseville is striving to become a place where human trafficking does not exist, where people have opportunities available to them, and where all people are treated as fully human and worthy of a supportive community and freedom, now therefore be it resolved that the city of Roseville declares January 2023 as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month in Roseville.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Etten. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that proclamation is approved. That then brings us to our business items this evening, and sort of the star attraction this evening is the item 7A, the consider adopting the 2023 final budget and city tax levy, as well as the EDA levy. And I believe our city manager, Pat Trudgeon, is going to begin, and we've got our finance director, Michelle Petrick, with us as well to help with the process. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, it is a pretty big item tonight is the 2023 budget, as well as the budget levy and EDA levy here. This is not a new topic for the City Council. You've seen it several times over the past few years and have a lot of supporting material that I know you've gone through and asked me questions throughout the process, so I do appreciate that. I'm going to give a very high overview of kind of where we're at with the budget, and be happy to answer any questions you may have, along with Finance Director Petrick, and we do have our department heads in attendance tonight if you have any specific questions regarding the department budgets. So let me just jump right in here. You've seen this calendar on every RCA we have about the budget here. We're at the end, the last two items here, and before we know it, at least 4 out of the 5 of us council members up here will be back at the 23 schedule for the 24 budget, but we are at the end of that. Oops. Overall, the budget as in front of you tonight is $61.3 million. with a proposed tax levy of $26.4 million. That represents a 6.22% increase. As you will recall, when I originally introduced the budget in August, it was 7%. You, as a council, did adopt a preliminary levy of 6.6%, but what is in front of you tonight is a 6.22% increase in the levy. So the impact on the median valued single-family home, which is now $335,400, so it did jump up dramatically, will see an increase of $9 per month or $108 more per year for the city. That does not factor in the EDA when comparing 23 to 22. The actual EDA levy will be $411,505, which will be a decrease of $31,000. So with that decrease, it will actually lower the overall impact people will be paying for taxes. I just wanted to walk through here real briefly. I just talked about it here, about where we started and where we are today. So the original city manager budget, as I said, had a levy increase of 7%, but a $63.3 million budget, 1.7 levy increase. We did adopt a preliminary city budget and levy on September 26th, and did lower that to 6.64%, and that was primarily removing the levy funding for the commitment to diversity officer in the police department. We're not eliminating that program, but as we don't typically touch into those dollars, we will fund that in the future from reserves and fund as needed, and it was always meant to be a short-term gap filler until there was a position open. So when we came forward at the public hearing last week, I did mention, and it's reflective in tonight's RCA, that we were able to find some additional dollars to cut from the budget that impacted the levy. Do appreciate the department head's work on all of this, and overall, the net effect is we were able to lower the levy by another $104,500, so dropping the actual levy increase from 1.74 to 1.54, or a levy increase of 6.22%. At the bottom there, you can see kind of how that has affected the median home value and what they'd be paying. With the original budget, about $118 more annually. We are now, with this final budget in front of you, about $101 what people will be paying annually. Obviously, that's just the median value. Everybody's value is different, and results will vary, but that is a good benchmark we have used to reflect our budget goals. So with that, this chart does show kind of where we were in 22 and where we're going in 23 here. And you can see these changes reflected. Would note with the EDA levy slightly going down, it's about 9 cents per month, so that does take some down. The utility rates that's shown on there is the 8% rate increase, and we'll have future discussion here tonight about that. So that would be perhaps the highest it would be. If there's any lesser amount of fee increase, then that would go down. But overall, about $13.45 per month when you factor the city levy, the EDA levy, and the utility rate, the average user on that, or $161 more when you factor all three in. So that is a quick overview of the budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll pause right now to see if you have any.
All right, any questions for the council, or from the council for staff on the proposed budget tax levy and EDA levy for 2023? And I did want to note, and maybe, I don't know, Ms. Petrick, if you have the information, I was trying to do a quick back calculation of what the 8.8% translates to in terms of what the total payment was in 22 and the total payment in 23. Or would you have to do the calculation on that, too?
I'd have to do the
Okay,
calculation.
all right. But needless to say, I think it's maybe order of magnitude, a couple $1,000s thereabouts, and so this is the change is, only change is what's reflected in this,
Right.
this table here. All right, if there's no questions for the council or for the staff, we do want to provide an opportunity for public comment or questions. If anyone from the public wishes to provide a comment on the proposed 2023 budget or tax levy or Economic Development Authority levy, this would be the opportunity to do so. The rules of the road for public comment, I'll repeat those for folks who may not have been here earlier in the meeting. We do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We do ask that you begin your comments with your name and street or address for the record. If you do have a name that's not commonly known how to spell, perhaps there is a clipboard on the side of the table that you can, after you're finished with your comment or question, you can slip off to the side and just put your name down so that we have a spelling for the record. Once again, I think I mentioned the 3-minute time limit. Direct any questions or comments to the council. If there are questions, we'll kind of make notes of those through the process and then try to address those at the end of the comment or question period. And then I believe that is one opportunity per speaker, per topic. So you try to squeeze everything you can into your 3 minutes. If you can't and you happen to have anything written down or want to go back to your seat and write down some more notes, feel free to give that to Mr. Trudgeon, and he'll make sure the rest of the council gets any additional information if you are not able to finish your complete testimony in the 3-minute time frame. With that, we'll open it up for public comment on the proposed 2023 budget, tax levy, and EDA levy. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to that this evening? Going once? Doesn't appear that we have anybody who wishes to speak to this evening, so we'll close the opportunity for public comment. Just double checking nobody online, right? Okay. All right, that brings us to council consideration.
Mayor? I'd like to motion.
I was actually going to suggest an order to the motions, that perhaps the first motion, just to kind of keep things in a logical sense, would be the budget, and then the levy, the tax levy, and then the debt levy, and then the EDA, if that makes sense.
Do you want them each done separately then?
I think, yeah, we'll do a single motion for each one.
So that would be C first.
Motion to approve number C, final budget.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve resolution attachment C, setting the 2023 city budget. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Strawn.
Nothing further.
All right. Seconder, Councilmember Groff.
Well, I appreciate what staff and what Mr. Trudgeon have done. They worked very hard the last couple months to get this to this level, and I think it's very lean. I do know that some of the residents have actually commented to me that it might be a little too lean, and we don't want to go down that road either. We want to have services that are important to Roseville. We want to have a well-funded police department, well-funded fire department, and so that's why I'm supporting this budget.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Etten.
I would agree. Appreciate staff's work on making some cutbacks and finding some space to help bring this levy down. It should bring us in the lower part of similar cities in the Twin Cities area, which I understand that 6.22% is a lot for a lot of people, but at the same time that we are working to be as reasonable as we can while still offering those important services. Appreciate the investments in a lot of things, whether it be our firefighters and their advanced life support training and funding for that through to our sustainability coordinator that we will have starting in 2023. So I think there's some important investments that happen while then maintaining what we have through some pretty major inflation.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Etten. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Wilmes.
I would echo those remarks. Certainly appreciate staff's second look at this since we adopted the preliminary numbers earlier in the year. A little bit of discomfort on my part with where we were at that point. A little more comfortable here this evening. And so certainly we'll be supporting the motion.
Good, thank you. The only other thing I would add, echoing all the comments that have been made up to this point, is that a lot of times we get questions about, well, you know, did the city actually look at cutting things? Where are the reductions? And of course, what we see in the action this evening is the net change. And I tried to find it in tonight's report. And by the way, RCA, for those at home who aren't sure what that means, it's Request for Council Action. You'll hear that a lot during our meetings. So in tonight's RCA, I didn't see it, but I know in the perhaps August, when the city manager presented his proposed budget, there was, and if it hasn't carried forward in other reports, I'm pretty sure it's there. There is a report on sort of the pluses and minuses going into 2023 as compared to 2022. There are a lot of things that are one-time expenditures that don't need to be carried forward, and we're definitely conscious of those and definitely subtract those out. And I think the example of the funding for the careers in policing is one example where we maybe had intended to stop that continuing forward sooner, but that leaves us a nice amount of reserves for for keeping that program going even without, levying the same amount each year. But yeah, that report is helpful to see actually those pluses and minuses and how they net out. And then the additional amounts that have been talked about this evening that were brought down from our initial approval back in September, or even what was proposed in August. So appreciative of all that, and thank staff for a very good budget process once again this year, and look forward to the process beginning at the beginning of the year next year. So that's kind of how it works. With that, we have the motion before us once again to adopt the resolution attachment C, which approves the 2023 city budget for the city budget for 2023. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The budget is approved. Next would be the approval of the city tax levy. I believe that's attachment A.
I'll move that approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve the city tax levy for 2023, which again is the resolution attachment A. Discussion of the motion. Councilmember Groff as the maker of the motion.
No, it's basically the same thing. I mean, this is why I'm supporting it, because this process has been done thoroughly by the staff and by Mr. Trudgeon.
All right. Councilmember Etten is the seconder.
Nothing more, thank you.
All right. Yep, certainly the levy does follow from the budget. All right, with that, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The levy is set for 2023. Next would be, I think, the debt levy. Councilmember Wilmes.
Mayor, I move the attached resolution, attachment B, the 2023 final debt levy.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Wilmes, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve the resolution attachment B, which sets the 2023 debt levy for the city. Any discussion on that motion?
We need to pay our bills.
Absolutely. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting that resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and the debt levy is set. And finally, as it relates to the Economic Development Authority levy for 2023. Councilmember Strawn.
Approve. Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, and this is resolution attachment D for those following at home. All right, and it was seconded by Councilmember Etten. All right, motion by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve the 2023 EDA tax levy. Discussion, Councilmember Strawn.
I just wanted to especially thank the EDA president for the opportunity to see that slight reduction and find those savings within. It was nice to be able to at least see a small decrease to add to our inflation and other things that we had to increase.
Thank you. And as the EDA president, I will defer that to the actual staff that did the work and made those recommendations to us, because certainly I don't want to take credit where it isn't due. But good and duly noted by Councilmember Strawn. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt Resolution D, adopting the EDA levy for 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and I believe that completes this agenda item related to city finances, but we've got more. Next on the agenda is consider adoption of the 2023 utility rates. And I'm not sure if it's, once again, Mr. Trudgeon to start this item off. Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, we're here to talk about the utility rates and setting those rates for 2023. We've touched on this a couple previous meetings, but more recently really focused on the water fund and the water rates. There is a couple factors there that have made it worthy of conversation. One is the underbilling and trying to understand how much that is, and we're going to collect that, and really trying to see what impact that would have on our fund balance and maybe trickle down to rates. The other thing, of course, is the pretty dramatic increase by St. Paul Water on their costs that they'd be charging us, and not just this year, or I should say 2023, but beyond that, so all those are factored in. This study that we undertook was for several reasons, to look at start looking at the sewer and stormwater, but also look at the water. One thing that proved challenging throughout is that as the study was underway, there are multiple points of changes. One would be the underbilling and learning that, also learning the St. Paul Water increase pretty late in the game. So as a result, I think the information shared with you has been more incongruent than we would like. It's been different in different packets, and we do apologize for that. That certainly was not our intention, but that's the result. And so as a result, I think we've all spent a lot of time going through the numbers, looking at the packets, and trying to figure out what the appropriate amount is. I would just call one example out. So on October 17th, the council did hear from elders and staff about the utility study, and in the packet is talking about the water fund. The numbers you see reflected on here, our rates, are actually reflective of a 9.5%, even though in the RCA we see 8%. And this was an earlier iteration when we first started talking about it internally. That should have been changed in the actual packet, but it wasn't. So then you flash forward to 11/7, looking something very the same, and those numbers reflect the 8% on that. So my apologies for that confusion. That shouldn't have happened, but it did. I'm happy to report what is in here is the same that is in tonight's packet as far as utility rate, at least at the 8%. We did provide an option for 7%, kind of switching the timing of those things if you want. But so once again, I just want to apologize for the confusion that was here and acknowledge that we made it more difficult